Welcome to Conquering Your Clownfish, a podcast dedicated to transforming disabilities into special abilities. I'm your host, Brady Murray. Welcome to Conquering Your Clownfish. I am excited to welcome our special guest today, Monica Castro. So I'm using my Spanish accent for that, Monica. Monica is a devoted mother of two amazing girls, an inclusive toy designer, a behavior analyst, and the owner of an ABA agency in Miami. With over 20 years of experience serving children and adults with disabilities, she remains dedicated to educating others about blindness and disabilities whenever possible. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Brady. Thank you for inviting me. I'm really excited to speak with you.
Yes. So anybody that follows, I'm gonna stick with it. Monica, I love the Spanish side. Anybody that follows Monica knows that much of her content is in Spanish. In fact, she has roots to Colombia, which is a dear place for me with my beautiful children who are Colombian. So we could do this in Spanish or we could do this in English. So that's kind of a fun thing. We could go either way.
We could do Spanglish. We use a lot of Spanglish here.
That's right. I do a lot of Spanglish in my house as well. It's just going to be super fun. I am way excited to be able to learn about your journey, but I would love to start by talking about your two amazing children, if possible.
Okay.
So I have to say, these are the two coolest names that I have ever heard for any siblings. We have Rio and we have Riz. Will you share with us a little bit about Rio and Riz?
Sure. So Rio is 8 years old and Rio has Down syndrome and she's also completely blind. She has what is called bilateral microphthalmia, which means small eyes. And some people with that condition can see, but she cannot. Rio is awesome. What can I say about Rio? Rio is a little bit of a musical savant as well. She has perfect pitch, which is kind of cool, and that's kind of like just a really cool, neat thing about her because she is starting to play by ear as well. Elementary type songs, Happy birthday, twinkle, twinkle. But we're being told how it starts,
Yeah.
So it's a really cool thing about her. She has a younger sister, Riz. And Riz is a typical, young girl. She's 7 going on 14.
That is so fun. And so let's talk about Rio. It's not overly common, I would say, for a child with Down syndrome to also have blindness, to not be able to see. And so I think that adds a whole new dimension to this journey and to this path. And so if you could share a little bit about that journey thus far. I mean, you're 8 years into it. You have some experience. Could you share with us about this journey?
Sure. When she was born, we knew at birth that there was no vision. I mean, I suppose that helped, right? Because I knew already, I didn't know anything about blindness. I did know a lot about raising or teaching a child with disabilities because I always say I kind of have been in training for this job all my life without knowing, because since my first real job in my teens was working in a group home, in a group home with adults. Yes. And then after that job, I just loved the field and I studied it and I got my master's in it and I became a behavior analyst. So I've always done this. And then my firstborn ends up being born with Down syndrome. So it was, I always say it's just it's been part of the plan. I was in training. There was no better mom that day, was my job. That was my job.
Yeah.
So, I didn't know, now I don't have this sense that I'm used to working with, when I teach, but it hasn't even, I gotta tell you, it hasn't been that bad, it really hasn't. In the beginning, the initial shock was a lot, I'm not gonna play that down. It was a hard year, that first year, learning all about it and what was going on, because it's not a part of Down syndrome. It's completely rare what happened to her. I have met one more child like that, by the way.
Really?
We connected on the internet, and we do know we haven't met physically, but they exist. Same exact condition, Down syndrome and the bilateral micro.
Wow. I've seen some of those videos of Rio and music. and you're
Yeah.
right. She is very talented. Like she
Yeah.
is really
No.
going places with that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious if this other child that you have met, their family, similar focus on music or similar talents?
They're very similar. Are they? She's younger though,
I see.
so we'll see. You know what I mean? She's younger, but the mom tells me that they're very similar.
Yeah,
So
beautiful,
yeah.
beautiful, beautiful. So in a common thread in fact two common threads that I've seen in this show as we've interviewed families from all throughout the world in raising and empowering a loved one that has a disability. One, it's amazing how often the sentiment is very similar to you, that I was made for this, I was prepared for this, I've been being
Mm-hmm.
prepared for this my entire life and I didn't even know it. And so I think that that has warrant and merit to be able to really value that and honor that. The
Mm-hmm.
second thing that I find is that families oftentimes will serve the pain that they know best, meaning that they have this unique path that they're going down and that has created whether that's pain or just simply a different perspective on life, and they lean into that wholeheartedly. And you have done exactly that with the work that you're doing in the ABA space. Can you share with us about that work?
Sure. So again, I was a behavior analyst before Rio was born. And I worked again, I started with adults and then with children. Now I work pretty much exclusively with children. So I have a behavior analysis company, and we pretty much work with children with Down syndrome, children with autism, children with ADHD, and other diagnoses, and we provide applied behavior analysis in their home. And what do? We work on communication. We work on, daily living skills. We work on independence. And then obviously we work on like reducing problem behaviors and any dangerous behaviors and things like that. I recently also opened up in New Jersey, which is my hometown. So,
Really?
yeah, yeah. So now I'm serving Miami, Florida, and New Jersey.
That's great. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. But I'm
Hmm.
sure you go there off seasons, right? Like Miami is more of a wintertime place, I'm hoping,
Yeah.
versus
Yeah.
New Jersey being in the
It's
summer,
cold
be your
now.
summer place, right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah,
good.
yeah.
So tell us about Rio's Place. Tell us about this company that you started.
Yeah, so this company, again, it was important. I used to work for many companies, and I was always, just helping other people grow their business. And then when Rio was born, I was like, I probably should be doing this for myself. So she really was definitely the catalyst for the courage I needed to open it up myself. And the company is called Rio's Place. And then when she was born, I quickly opened that and I started serving children. And I mean, we have about 50 employees, that are serving clients in the community. And Jersey is starting to grow. And like you said, like, yeah, you know what? I kind of like when you have a child like Rio, and especially when we added the blindness, like I had to just like dive in. It's the only way. Like for me, I think it would have been really hard if I was like an accountant, and then having to raise Rio. So I think it just makes it easier that I decided to just everything I do is going to be that way. How I make my money, how I do everything is that way. How I'm creative, now with making toys and stuff, like that's like my outlet. So everything has to be in that box.
Yeah, that really comes back to that concept of serving the pain that you know best. You've
Yep.
truly been entrusted with life experiences leading up to this, and then entrusted with Rio, and being able to make absolutely the most of that, and blessing a lot of people in the process. Talk to me about these toys. This is a fun thing that you are working on right now.
Yeah, so I got a 3D printer.
Had you had any experience in 3D printing before?
No,
Nothing. You've heard of
no. I
them.
knew, you see them online, you're like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I had been entertaining the idea of getting one for a minute, but I just didn't. And then I was like, let me get one. And I got one. And it was so crazy because I built it myself. It's not that difficult, to be honest. Like, they make them now that you can just do it yourself. I mean, you have to follow
Yep.
instructions or whatnot. And I made it myself. And then I was like, huh. There were these beads that someone had that Rio came home with, friendship bracelet beads. They had braille on one side.
Absolutely.
Yeah, she
Yeah.
came home with those one day, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is great! They're braille, because you don't often see that." And then I was like, where did these come from? So I started looking, and I couldn't find it. Like they weren't like on Amazon. They weren't, anywhere. I ended up finding them at a American Printing House for the Blind. And I don't know how they make them, but I saw them there and I was like, okay. And they were just really expensive because all educational items for blind kids, because of adding the braille and because how
Got
unique
it.
it is, they're really expensive. It's
Got
like
it.
crazy. And it's like, why is it so expensive? Like it can't be. So I'm thinking like, how can I make these? And then the 3D printer thing happened.
Yep.
And I hired someone on Fiverr to make me a file because I do not know how to make CADs or like how to do that.
Right.
Not yet. I'm gonna learn. But I hired someone and really easily they made it for me and I just started printing them. I have to learn. I make a lot of mistakes. I'm on
Yeah.
Google all the time, on YouTube, like watching the videos, like how do I, do this? But I've done them. That's it. I've made them. They're in production. I've sold some. People really love them. I'm making them really colorful. I find that like items for blind children are always, they're just kind of, they're not cute, right? They're just kind of
Yeah.
like, just functional, fine. But complete blindness is rare. Rio is
Yeah.
completely blind, no light perception. The percentage of
Mm.
people that have nothing is very little. On the spectrum, blindness spectrum, you can see maybe some shadows and then some colors and then to more objects and then they're blurry and there's like just a huge spectrum. So being
Yeah.
completely blind is very rare.
Yeah.
So I was like, why are they like these items can be cute, these items can be colorful, these items can look appealing to other kids so they could be
Yeah.
more inclusive. So like
That's right.
that's my idea, to make toys inclusive that like both my daughters could play with and enjoy equally. So,
I
that's my project.
I love your mindset because I mean, you're running a big company, you started another company, you're raising a couple of children that is always going to be a unique challenge and trial. But then Rio has Down syndrome and she's blind. And going back to, I'm paraphrasing, but you're saying it really hasn't been that tough. It really hasn't been that bad. And I just think that a lot of the successes that you're having really stems from your mindset and your can-do attitude and your positivity. I mean, just in the few minutes that we've been visiting here, I can't help but for myself feel more positive and feel more optimistic
Oh,
about the
good.
future
Thank you.
just with your mindset. And so has it always been this way? Is this a natural superpower for you?
Yeah. I mean, I think so. I think I'm pretty positive in general. Again, with my daughter Rio, the first year was not like this. I was very depressed because it was all a surprise and I didn't expect, and I had terrible postpartum. It was a really bad year. But, I did what I had to do. I got my therapy. I did all, I'm going to make myself well, like I know how to do that. And I went to fix myself. And then after I did, it's just been, you know, it, it's just my life. And I feel so lucky though, because I don't know, I think I'm doing some pretty cool stuff, that not
You are.
everybody, not everybody will have the chance to do, or would even had a thought of doing it because of my circumstance. So I have
That's
a lot
right.
of fun. Yeah, I'm having a lot of fun. I'm meeting such cool people like you. I meet a lot of people on the internet because of that. All my business is that way.
Absolutely.
I'm just, I love it.
Well,
Do you
and
know
you're
what I
you're
mean? Like it's not like,
yeah,
it's
you're
great.
thriving in it. So in
Yeah.
the questionnaire, one of the questions we always have our guests answer is about the hardest parts of this journey.
Hmm.
And if it's okay, I'd like to read what you wrote. It's just
Okay.
one simple line, but I think this would be really fun to be able to discuss. And you
Okay.
bring up an important topic here, the topic of
Hmm.
ableism. And
Hmm.
so you share the hardest part of this journey has been dealing with my own internalized ableism, acknowledging that of my family's and the world's ableism. So, for our
Hmm.
listeners who maybe are less familiar with the term, would you be open to just giving your own 2 cents on or definition of what ableism is? And then let's dive into this a bit.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just those prejudice that we have, right? That I know for me, they're inside of you, like it's in your core because it's from birth. Your mother had it, and then you have it. And now it's my job to change it, obviously, so that my daughters don't have it, but it's prejudice, it's assumptions, it's ideas we have about people with disabilities. They're less than, they're not good enough, you're bad for having them, I'm a bad mom, like I couldn't make a good child, ideas, things like that is what I think it is, or how I kind of conceptualize it in my mind.
Absolutely.
And then it's mine because you have to do the work every day. So every day, because it'll, like I said, it's in your core. It's like it's in the womb. I always say, like, those thoughts, those ideas, like they're already in, you're born with them. So every day I have to really be aware of my head. Like, what am I thinking? Did I just think something? Because I work with disabilities all day. That's my life. It's always around. It's what I always do. It's my job. It's everywhere. Yeah. So I have to check myself every day. Those little thoughts that want to go through your head.
Yeah.
I do it with Rio too.
Yeah. Ironically enough, that is a large part of the motivation on why I created this podcast and why I named it what I named it, with Conquering Your Clownfish, because it stems from Finding Nemo and an overprotective father, Marlin, the clownfish, that is constantly telling Nemo what he can't do and what he should avoid. And he's coming from a place of pure, like, wanting the best for his child, but by doing so is holding him back from ultimately singing the song that you're meant to sing. And as I read that answer and as I've heard you describe this, I think that is truly a challenge that is external for the world, that they naturally are going to think that, but it's just as big a challenge for us as caregivers, that we often are our worst enemies for our child in not allowing them to truly rise up and be able to accomplish that which they need to do. And so that's unique that you recognize that, and that you're so proactive in doing a self-check on where you are mentally on that. And interestingly enough, this is part of your career. You're a professional. Your job is to be able to empower these children and teach these children these amazing skills, but even you have to be able to be mindful about that.
Yep. It's every day. You have to check yourself every day, like, because it'll always want to creep back, Yeah.
How have you seen yourself change with raising a child that has Down syndrome, that has a disability, versus Rio being born? You worked in this space, you're working with children, and then you're entrusted with a child of your own. How did that change things for you?
Yeah, it changed things dramatically, because you would think, with my experience when she was born, I mean, maybe I would have been happy, or I would have been like, great, let's go. But I wasn't. Because again, it was a surprise. So my initial feelings were not like that. I was not happy. I had a lot of guilt. I did something. God is punishing me. I had all that. And it's crazy, because I work with these children all, you know what I mean? And I had to be like, God, Monica, you need to look at this, because you serve these these families, and why is it so bad now? You know what I mean? Like, what is this feeling you're having? Like, why do you feel this way? So I really had to dive into that question, those feelings. But now it's a strength, right? Because now myself, I generally work more with the families, like the parents and my staff, right? Because I run the company now more so, and I have other behavior analysts that work for me, and they're actually seeing the clients. I don't see too many clients, but I do like to be like the first line with the families. Yeah. At least they meet me first, or I handle the first phone call or things like that. But now I get to educate these other therapists about it, and the mothers about it. A lot of the new work I'm doing now is on what we call compassionate care in ABA, which is recognizing how these parents feel, because we get a phone call, hi, sometimes we're the first line, like, you just got an autism diagnosis. And we're the first people that you might, because doctors are like, here, you need ABA, here, call this person. And they call, and it's a business. Hey, what insurance do you have? Okay. And but we need to wait for that. Like, we need to let these people know that, hey, is this hard for you? Because it might be, maybe it's not, but usually it is. Let's talk about that first. How are you? Are you okay? What do you need? Like, tell me. before we start getting into what insurance do you have, and this is the copay and all that stuff, you know?
Sure.
So I feel like now I get to teach my therapists as well as, and
Yeah.
help these parents
Yeah.
and empower these parents too.
That's right. I really appreciate your vulnerability with that, because you're right. You would think that somebody who is professionally trained and has been working with families that have a loved one with a disability for years and years and years, that when this surprise came, that would not be as devastating or a traumatic experience. You would think that on the outset. But
You
the
would
reality
think.
of it, and what you have shared so beautifully, is that it was. And it took a good year, all of a year, to be able to get to a place where you felt good about this path that you are now going to be going on. And so I would hope that our listeners that maybe harbor some of that guilt or that shame of feeling bad about not necessarily being rejoiceful in the diagnosis would recognize that this is all of us. All
Yeah.
of us are facing
Yeah.
this. We all experience that.
Right. All of us. And it's that work we have to do. Like I always say, like it's like in our blood,
It
those
is.
feelings. You know what I mean? That's why I always say it's like in my core. Like I was born with it.
Yeah,
So
yeah, it's
it's
a
very
natural
interesting.
human tendency just to be able to, it's self-preservation, it's a
Right.
protection mechanism that
Yep.
fear is oftentimes the initial feeling versus faith or confidence to be able to overcome. And so it's a very natural human tendency, and you obviously see that very much so in your profession. So I want to ask, as we're wrapping up, I would love to ask the question, look at what you've accomplished, look at what you're doing, look at the companies that you have started, look at your daughters thriving. Fast forward 5, 10, 15 years from now, where do you hope to be? What do you hope to have accomplished personally, professionally, just with your aspirations and just this awesome, kind spirit that you have?
I mean, I think I'd love to continue to grow my companies in other states, at least for Rio. Like I like to think about Rio and how Rio will be 5 years from now. I think 5 years from now we'll be having much more fluid conversations because she can have conversations now pretty well. But I think in 5 years we'll be really like just bantering. You know what I mean? I have this dream of being able to like, because she's funny. I think she has a good sense of humor of being able to like do little jokes with her, like hide things because she's, you know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
and have you ever watched there's a guy who does a lot of practical jokes on his blind
I think I have.
husband, and he pranks him, and it's
Yes.
hysterical. And I love to watch them, and that's like a kind of sense of humor that Rio has, and I think that like she'll enjoy like silly things like that. So I think about that, and I see her, just really independent, blind,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Still, always, but very independent and like just really just conversation with me and just a really people person. Like that's what I'm envisioning or manifesting for her. And yeah, I want my company to grow, obviously, and I want to keep making more toys. But I hope
Yeah.
to be able to somehow be able to make an impact as that this idea of if you want inclusion, it starts with play. Like if your typical kids in a family has no disabilities and your toys just came with Braille and your
Yeah.
toys just had these things, you would know it wouldn't be such a big deal.
That's right.
So my
It's
mind is
accepted.
like, how can that happen? How can toys just come like that all the time?
That's right. Yeah,
So
that's right. As you were sharing that, I couldn't help but think of good old rule number 6. And so I don't know if you've ever heard this before, but it's a principle. It's rule number 6. I call it good old rule number 6. And it is, don't take yourself so dang seriously. And you embody that. Like, how cool is that you share? In 5 years from now with Rio, at the relationship that we have and the rate that we're going, we're going to be just having a grand old time, bantering back and forth, playing little
yes,
jokes on one another, and just
yes,
having so much fun with it. And that
yeah,
is awesome, because
yeah,
it's a path that you've been entrusted that you could be very serious and like very hard-lined about it, but you choose happiness, you choose joy, and what a blessing that is for your
yeah,
entire
yeah,
family. And
yeah.
we just really, really appreciate what you're doing and the example that you have set forth on your social media, and just super thankful that you were a guest on the podcast today as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Brady. It was very nice. I enjoyed myself. Thank you.
And I cannot wait. 5 years from now, we got to see Rio singing because that girl, she's got some pitch and she's got some
She's got,
talent.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
She gets her lessons on Tuesdays. Today's lesson day. And she practices by herself. Like, what do kids want to do alone? She wants to like be on the piano. So
Uh-huh.
it's like, wow, like, okay. It's interesting
That,
to watch that.
yeah, that's worth checking out on your Instagram page. Her on the
Hmm.
piano and singing Do Re Mi Fa Sol La Ti all the way up. Like she just
Hmm.
crushes it. She's so good, so so good. All right, Monica, so good to be able to spend some time with you today. Thank you for being a guest on the show. We'll include all of your information in the show notes. Highly encourage our guests or our listeners to be able to check out our amazing guests and be able to see the great work that she's doing. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Conquering Your Clownfish. If you liked what we discussed on the podcast today and want to continue the conversation, please visit us at conqueringyourclownfish.com. And please don't forget to subscribe.